The 632nd edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
Elton ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. 17 seconds left. And he was fouled. Here we go. Lawson with a runner. No. The rebound. Hansbrough at the gun. Got it.
They were 4 for 24.
Hansbrough on a switch on Paulus. A deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Tipped away by Johnson. It's loose. Page. Johnson.
They're dancing in the arms. They're high-fiving. They're celebrating. They're going bananas on Franklin Street.
Pass to Britt, 15 seconds to play. Up high to Page, gets a screen from Meeks. Page driving in on the left, high off the glass for two. Louisville with 7 seconds. Jones has it, goes left corner, Black's here for three. Back iron, 1 second to play. Stick up, no! Carolina wins it! The Tar Heels win it! 72-71. 6 seconds to go. Pinson comes front court. Pinson to May for the win. Got it! Luke May! He got it! 0.3 of a second! Luke May gives Carolina the 75-73 lead. Are you kidding me?
Inside 30 overall. Love, top of the key. Oh! Big time delivery.
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
Hello and welcome into another live edition of the Four Corners podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Josh and Anthony here with you guys on a Saturday night about, 4-ish hours or so after Carolina in dramatic fashion and come from behind fashion and harder than it should have been fashion beats Ohio State 71-70 in Atlanta at the CBS Sports Classic to improve to 11-1, and we're here to talk about that victory and just a chaotic game for Carolina, and one that has to have sets us up for a fun discussion topic we'll have a little bit later on in the show. We'll take a look at the box score. You'll hear from head coach Hubert Davis. I'll read that quote to you for the quote of the game. You'll also hear from Seth Trimble. We've got the stat of the game and so much more. But let's go ahead. Let's get into this recap, man, because this was a game that I thought Carolina would win. This is a game Carolina should have won, and they did so, 71-70. And look, first half left a lot to be desired. It was 34-31 at the break. Carolina not playing their best basketball, but working Seth Trimble back from injury. Maybe it made some sense, in an arena that didn't have a whole lot of life and energy in it after the St. John's and Kentucky game went final. Beforehand, second half, Carolina starts building a lead, and they start to really extend themselves. They go up, I think it was 56-45, and then it was 58-47. They had back-to-back trips where they could have made it a 13, 15-point lead. They missed shots at the rim, and lo and behold, those would prove costly because Ohio State, led by Bruce Thornton, one of the best guards in all of college basketball, one of the best guards in the Big Ten, they just steadily kept playing, kept fighting. And before you knew it, after Caleb Wilson foul on a three-point shooter, Ohio State has the lead with 45 seconds, 50 seconds left to go. They're up 70-69, which at that point, things were flying in the house. I threw my hat, I took my shirt off, and I threw it. And I was sitting here in utter disgust because I thought Carolina had pissed away a game. They should not have been doing so. But it's why it's a 40-minute game. And it's why you got to play until there's 0 ticks on the horn. Seth Trimble gets a layup. Carolina calls a timeout. with about 33 seconds left to go in the ball game. They pick up full court, and they do what they've done a lot of times when they pick up full court. They force a turnover. Jared Stevenson, I believe, was the guy that came away with the steal. Carolina a chance to take the lead in the final seconds, and that's what they would do. As Seth Trimble is driving to the basket, he falls, but as he falls, there's Henry Vassar waiting for a bounce pass. The Estonian grabs it and dunks it home to give Carolina the lead. They would get the stop on the other end to get the win, to improve to 11-1 on the year. Their first 11-1 start since 2008, 2009. If you're not familiar with that season, Carolina would go on to win the national championship. Caleb Wilson had one of his best games as a Tar Heel, a 20-point, 15-rebound performance in his hometown. Henry Vassar totaled a double-double as well, adding with 17 and 10. Trimble back from injury. He adds 17. Those three guys combined to score 35 of the 37 points in the second half. And when you look up at the end of the day, Carolina, as I mentioned, is 11-1 on the year. This win, as of right now, registers as a quad one victory. So Carolina is now 3-1 in quad one. And quite simply, this is now the second game this season they've won that they don't win a year ago. The first game was the win at Kentucky, where Carolina won a game in the mud. Derek Dixon made the plays in the stretch to give Carolina the win. And this one tonight is a game that I don't think Carolina would have been mentally tough enough to bounce back from a year ago after blowing a double-digit lead. And while it was frustrating at times, while it was infuriating at times, we're sitting here 11-1, one final game to go before ACC play, and this team is putting itself in the conversation to be a legitimate threat to not only win a conference championship, but a national championship as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, there's still work to do in order for them to get to that point. I'm not quite ready to say that this team is ready to win a national championship based on what we saw today. Teams that are ready to win national championships, this game's probably put away a little bit earlier. But the thing that I will say is that, with a group that was returning a guy from injury, with a group that has a true freshman that is the star of the group, this group finds a way to win these games. And, against Kentucky, it was ugly. It was one of those games that you thought, okay, this one probably isn't going to go Carolina's way. And then in the end, they end up out executing Kentucky when they had to. Same thing in this game against Ohio State. Now, it wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. This was a game that should have been put away a lot earlier. You should have just put this game away in general. And it looked like you were actually going to find a way to lose this one. So just finding a way to come back and win it, I think it really says a lot about this group. It shows that this group is willing to battle for just about any game. I thought one of the things that was amazing to me was you look at the guys that stepped up when Carolina needed them to. And you could say whatever you want. I had somebody that responded to my thoughts after the game and said, Caleb Wilson made some mistakes down the stretch. Yes, that is true. There were some things that Caleb Wilson, did throughout the day that he could have done better. We talked about how he strays away from guys on the defensive end of the floor at times, leaving guys open and stuff like that. He came up with the block that ends up sealing the game. If that block doesn't happen, Carolina potentially loses this game on a second chance opportunity. So I think you got to give him a lot of credit. You got to give all of these guys a lot of credit because Seth Trimble, as he goes to the floor, somehow gets that pass off to Henry Vassar. Vassar ends up finishing through finishing that basket that gives Carolina the lead. He was big for Carolina really throughout the entire day, hitting big shots. And so I think those guys definitely deserve a lot of credit for where Carolina is at. And, when you look at it and you say, well, why are you so complimentary of those guys, even if they were making mistakes down the stretch? Guys, without them, Carolina does not even come close to winning this game. They would have been blown out in the second half because of the 35 points that were scored in the second half, they scored, or the 37 points scored in the second half, they scored 35 of them. The only other person to score in the second half of this game was Jaron Stevenson. Nobody else could find the basket. So these guys deserve a ton of credit, even though, they might not have been the most efficient at certain times. These guys really put this team on their back and carried them to victory when they needed to. And I think it's just amazing that now this team sits at 11-1. And you could say, well, they didn't play the schedule that they've played in years past. As of right now, as it sits right now, Carolina's got 3 quad 1 victories. Now we'll see ultimately where that Ohio State game ends up, whereas this game ends up. But that's pretty damn good. That's a pretty built up resume for Carolina, considering where they have been in recent years when they played even tougher schedules. So I give this team a lot of credit, man. They have found ways to win some of these very important games when they probably shouldn't have come away with victories because of the way that they played in them. But this team battles, man, and they've got guys that just know how to make plays in clutch time, and we saw that again in this one.
Yeah, what this win really saved us from was dealing with the fire Hubert Davis crowd, because I think those guys would have been out in full force. They would have had the pitchforks. It would have been like that Dr. Pepper commercial ready to go, where the hot seat was going to be there and ready for him. And what saved his bacon was Carolina's full court press. And I said this, out loud. Don't know if you were really paying attention to me or not. When Carolina picked up full court, they get the turnover. They need to do that more often. Like,
had it in my takeaways.
It just feels like this is something that they do when they're trailing or when they need to flip the way the tempo of the game's being played. I want this. We got to be on the aggressive, man. I want pedal to the metal. I want to choke these teams out. I want to step on their necks, and I want to bury them. When you get up 8 full court press, make it a 10, 12, 14 point game. Let's be in attack mode and not use this whenever we've got to, because he does it very well. They execute it very well. This wasn't like Roy Williams, man. Roy Williams would do it just so he could tell reporters, I tried something different defensively. He didn't coach full court press well, did not coach run and trap well, did not coach a 2-3 zone well. When Carolina does these different things defensively, yeah, there are times they give up a bucket. That's going to happen if a team knows how to break a press. But they forced a turnover. They get the steal. They force a quick shot that leads to a run out the other way. They achieve the ultimate goal. And my thing is, well, let's start doing it when we're winning as opposed to losing. But it was there for them. Credit Jaron Stevenson, the unsung hero of the game tonight. Moved to the bench, but made big play after big play. Got some, obviously got the steal, got some big rebounds, got that layup, that dunk in transition in the second half. That was a big bucket at the time. And we'll talk about it more a little bit later. You saw the depth for Carolina really step up in a big way. And it's a big reason why they emerge victorious. Let's go ahead and take a look at the box score. I'll pull it up for you guys back at home. And this was a game that Carolina had to fight and scratch and claw to come away with the win. They shoot just 44% from the field. They were 28 of 63, but defensively they were where they needed to be. They hold Ohio State to 40% shooting. The Buckeyes were 25 of 63. Neither team had a big day from the perimeter, but Carolina 8 of 27 from behind the three-point line. That works itself out to 30%. Ohio State, though, just 4 of 20 for 20%. So Carolina, 4 more makes in that category, proves to be a big difference in the ball game. Free throw shooting left a lot to be desired. Carolina just 7 of 14 from the free throw line tonight for a pathetic 54%. Meanwhile, Ohio State 16 of 19 from the line. They shoot 84%. Both teams took care of the basketball. 7 turnovers led to 10 points for Ohio State. 6 Ohio State turnovers led to 7 points for Carolina. It was even on the boards, 39 apiece. Carolina had the advantage on the defensive glass, 27-26. Ohio State had the advantage on the offensive glass, 13-12. But Carolina was better in second chance points, 14-7. Their bench was better as well. Carolina's bench 15-0, the advantage over the Buckeyes. Ohio State did have more points in the paint, 38-34. Fast break points 10-5 in favor of Carolina. Blocks 5-3 in favor of Carolina. Steals went to the advantage of Ohio State 5-4. Assist Carolina's favor 22-17. The game was tied 5 times. There were 8 different lead changes, and Carolina led for 31 minutes and 51 seconds. And that was going to be, maybe the cardinal sin had Carolina lost this game, was the fact that, they took the lead 16-15. And up until, the 4-point play, Ohio State never led again. So for the majority of the game, this was Carolina's game to be had. But they never effectively put the game away. But there they were making the plays down the stretch to be able to emerge victorious. We'll get to the quote of the game, and we'll talk about and I'll read the quote from Hubert Davis. This is about the return of Seth Trimble and the versatility that it offers. And Hubert said, quote, "It gives us versatility, able to do some different things that are specific for each game. This game," and I talked about Devin Royal, but there was really only one guy on our team that had any chance of getting a stop on Bruce Thornton. That was Seth. And so having him in the lineup is huge. Obviously, he's gifted. I feel like in transition, it's the first time we've gotten pitch-ahead dunks and layups in a while. So we've got to get back to that because a huge part of our offense is being able to sprint, end quote. We obviously recorded yesterday before the Trimble news became official. And I will, just make sure that people were aware, we did make that known. It was not something that we previewed the game and ignored. Seth Trimble was going to be back. With the way our work schedules were, just had to record at a time where that we recorded before that news was out there. But we did address there was a chance he would be available for this game because of how close he had gotten in the final week. And you just felt his immediate impact from the moment he was back on the court. The first bucket of the game was created because he pushed the floor off a miss. Visar runs the floor, and he bounced past for a dunk. Trimble's first 6 points were points in transition. That's more points than Carolina scored in the entire game the other night in transition points. And, 10 points aren't a big number. I think, for a lot of Carolina fans, if you're a Roy Williams disciple, you're used to seeing that 12, 14, 16, 18 points or higher. But Carolina's offense looked better, I thought, at different times tonight because Trimble can be a one-man fast break in the way that Luka Bogovac cannot be. He has the ability to just create for himself. I think he's really good at, leaking out after Carolina secures a defensive rebound and getting behind the defense to get a layup, dunk, or draw a foul. And then you mentioned the defense. I don't know if Carolina wins this game without Seth Trimble. Bruce Thornton's that good of a guard. And look, he had a good game tonight. He scored 16 points. But was 7 of 16 from the field, 0 of 4 from 3. And it felt like whenever Trimble was on him, it was contested. He was in his hip pocket. He made it hard for him to get where he wanted to get to. It made it hard for him to finish, inside the 3-point line. And so, look, it may not have been the way I had gone about it, bringing Trimble back in a game of this magnitude where you're playing in a quad 1 game on a neutral floor, where your next game is, against a bye opponent before you go away for Christmas. But it's why, Hubert Davis is the head coach, and it's why I'm a podcast host, because he knows a whole heck of a lot more than I do. And simply put, offense, defense, intangibles, Carolina does not win this game tonight without Seth Trimble being on the floor.
Absolutely no chance Carolina wins this game if Luka Bogovac is out there playing the majority of the minutes. I mean, he played 13 minutes in this game because he just wasn't giving you anything. What Seth Trimble is able to do defensively for you, especially on Bruce Thornton, really just, that was the difference in the game. You go back to the first half, Thornton had just 6 points because Seth Trimble was doing such a great job of taking him away. In the second half, credit to Ohio State, they were screening a lot more, trying to get that switch, and it worked a few times, and that's what allowed Thornton to be successful. But when it mattered the most, Seth Trimble was able to stop him. And then what he's able to do on the offensive end of the floor, yeah, not only is he able to push the pace for Carolina, that was something that was more than welcomed back to this lineup that we hadn't really seen. With him off the floor, there just wasn't a guy that really was able to push the pace that same way. And it's weird because you saw some really nice plays in transition from Kyan Evans, from Derek Dixon. But for some reason, when you don't have a guy like Seth Trimble on the floor that just has that mindset of let's get the ball and let's run, they're not able to do that. You don't have anybody else that's really shown that type of mentality. So, I mean, I thought he was great in that area. He attacked the rim at certain points the way that, we haven't seen from these guards here recently. I mean, you talked about, that first bucket of the game. That's him attacking the basket. And he ends up getting double teamed, finds Henry Vassar, and it's an easy finish for Vassar, and it leads to an easy bucket. So, I mean, yeah, that's what you're looking for out of Seth Trimble, is just for him to make things easier for you on the offensive end of the floor. And then how about the fact that he comes back and he leads this team in three-point shooting? That was really what I think was tremendous in this game. Was that's not necessarily his strength. It's something that I think he is capable of doing, and doing at a pretty decent level. We saw it at the start of last year. He was shooting about 40% from beyond the arc. I think he's capable of doing that, but we'll see if this continues throughout the year. But in this game where they needed him to knock down some key shots from the outside, he was able to do that. Every one of those threes felt big from him. He hit 3 of them on the night, and every single one of them felt like they were big at the time when he ended up hitting them. So, I mean, credit to him. He is just a tremendous addition to this Tar Heel group out there on the floor. You wonder if they had him against Michigan State, would Carolina have been able to keep that game a lot closer? I mean, I think he would have been able to take away Jeremy Fears a lot better than Carolina was able or did in that game without Seth Trimble on the floor. But the other thing is, and Cheryl McMillan pointed this out, people really underplayed how big of a role Seth Trimble was going to play on this team. I mean, there were some people that debated whether or not this dude should be starting this year for Carolina before the season started. And you look at what he did tonight for Carolina. He's shown the leadership. He's shown the scoring ability. He is such a great defender that it's impossible for him to be out of the starting lineup. This dude is really, I mean, when you look at it, yes, Caleb Wilson and Henry Vassar are incredibly important to the success of Carolina, but the heart and soul of this team feels like it is Seth Trimble, and they got that back tonight, and that's part of the reason they're walking away from Atlanta with a victory.
He's the most respected leader on the roster. As much vocal leadership as Henry Vassar has offered Carolina, and I think he's very vocal, everyone respects Seth Trimble. It's why he could call a team meeting after a win over Navy where he was sitting on the bench in street clothes because he was injured. No one else has the cachet to be able to do that, and he is the fullest extension of Hubert Davis on the court. It's not Kyan Evans. It's not Derek Dixon. It's not Caleb Wilson. It's Seth Trimble, and you could see there's so much trust that Hubert has in him to make those plays down the stretch, and it's why he's the beneficiary of being here for 4 years. It's why he has that relationship that he has with his head coach. The stat of the game, I wrote down perimeter shooting. I was trying to figure out, did I go 3-point shooting or points in transition, because Carolina was +5 transition points, but they're +4 in terms of make threes, which means they were +12 from behind the 3-point line. And what this really needs to point out is Carolina's ability to defend the three was exceptional tonight, holding an Ohio State team that, totality, not top to bottom, a great 3-point shooting team, but 3 of their top 4 scores all shot 36% or better from behind the 3-point line. You hold Thornton to just 0 for 4. Mobley, was 2 for 6. I think he was the one that did make the 3 to put them ahead. It was either him or Royal, but how about, forcing Tilly into 3 3-pointers that, required to be taken, but he's not a good three-point shooter. Great job by Carolina forcing the ball into him and making him have to take a shot that he's not capable of making. And the thing you said about Trimble's threes are what they were for Carolina today. It just felt like every time Carolina needed a bucket and it had to come from the perimeter, there it was. Derek Dixon makes a three to make it 34-31. After it looked like Carolina was about to pull away because it went up 29-20. It felt like this was when they were going to time to separate themselves from Ohio State. Back come the Buckeyes with an 11-2 run. Derek Dixon makes a three, gives Carolina the lead going into the break. Henry Vassar, he makes two. He goes 2 of 5 from three. And, both threes I thought were more like tone setting, where it was just, okay, Tilly, you've got to come out because if not, I'm going to pop this three and I'm going to make it more often than not, which just spreads the defense, opens up driving lanes for the guards. Then you mentioned I mentioned Dixon, Jaden Young with the big three, as well with Jonathan Powell in the corner. You don't get a three from Jared Stevenson, but look, we all want the percentage to be better. Carolina, I don't know how many times you're going to win shooting 30% from behind the three-point line on 27 makes. I don't. But if you can make the right type of threes, the right time of threes, sometimes that is more important than percentage. And I thought that played out in a big way today, where Carolina didn't shoot it well from behind the three-point line, but on the flip side, didn't allow their opponent to do so either.
Yeah, I mean, they were 4 of 12 in the second half, and I thought that was really key. But, I mein, you go and look, really the difference in this game was what they were able to do on the perimeter against Ohio State in terms of Ohio State on the offensive end of the floor. As you mentioned, I mean, Thornton in this game just, 0 for 4. A guy that came in shooting 50% from beyond the arc, one of the best marks in all of college basketball. Tilly having to shoot 3 threes from the outside. Yeah, there were times where it felt a little frustrating because he was so wide open, but we saw why he was that wide open. And for Carolina to only allow 4 made threes in this game, I mean, that's an accomplishment, because this is a team that came in averaging 9 per game. So great job by Carolina. They were prepared for what Ohio State was going to throw at them. Big part of that was Seth Trimble being back on the perimeter to be able to take that away. But how about in the second half? Now, part of it is that Ohio State was getting pretty much anything that they wanted inside the paint. That's an area where Carolina's got to be much better. But they only allowed 6 3-point field goals in the second half, and Ohio State was 1 of 6 on those 6 3-point attempts. So a great job by Carolina on that end of the floor. And then, when you come up with timely threes, that's ultimately what matters. You don't have to make a high percentage if you're going to hit the ones that matter the most, and if you're going to defend like this. Now, the thing is I don't know how many other games Carolina is going to be able to defend the three like this. So that's where you've got to have the 3-point percentage come up. That's where you need a better shooting day from Luka Bogovac from the outside. You need someone on the bench to give you more than just 1 3. But when you're getting what you're getting, if it's going to continue for Seth Trimble and Henry Vassar, then I think you're going to be perfectly fine with the amount of makes that you're going to have. It's just we want to see other guys on this team make shots. I mean, Jared Stevenson from the outside, can you knock one down? It has been a rough year for him from the outside. We thought coming over from Alabama to change the scenery might help him. That hasn't necessarily helped him from the outside. So you're going to need other guys to step up around the big three, who we know are going to be capable of making shots from the outside. But Carolina hits enough today. More importantly, they defended the way that they needed to be able to get out with a victory.
And you mentioned, or I'll mention, you hold Ohio State to 20% shooting from behind the three-point line. That's in a game where you only allow 70 points. The 12th game this year where Carolina has allowed 75 points or fewer. The 12th straight game they've allowed 75 points or fewer. That ties the program record with the 1997-1998 team. What that team do? Didn't win a national championship, but they did go to the Final Four. with that, we'll transition into our thoughts and takeaways and discussion topic portion of the show. We mentioned it in the open about Carolina's big three carrying Carolina in the second half. Wilson, Trimble, Visar, they combined to score 35 of the 37 points for Carolina. And I wrote this in the article. You can check it out on HeelToughBlog.com. It had the look and the feel of 2 years ago when RJ Davis, Harrison Ingram, and Armando Bacot would just will Carolina to wins on nights where they didn't shoot it well, didn't maybe play to their capabilities, but they just had a toughness about them that they were going to make the plays down the stretch. This team looks different. They do it different. It's not the same, but I kind of got that same vibe, with the way that the final minute or so played out, because all three of those guys made big-time plays. It was Trimble with the layup. It was Trimble with the pass to Henry with the dunk, and then Caleb Wilson on the other end with the block to seal the game. And let's not, that block, credit him for being able to make that play and not foul. Because my biggest worry with the way this game was officiated was that Carolina was going to foul contesting a shot. That was where I had just convinced myself, because that officiating crew was horrible. That is as poorly officiated a basketball game I have seen this season and in quite some time. And that's saying a lot, because I watch a lot of basketball and officiating is crap. But the way this game was officiated, credit Caleb Wilson for making that play and being able to do so without drawing a foul. And look, a lot of people believe that, with Seth Trimble back, Carolina is ready to ascend. They're ready to start climbing. And now that Carolina is whole, you've got your three best players playing at a high level. And we said this all along, that the way Seth plays would be easy to integrate him back into what you're doing. That's how he's able to score 17 points on 6 of 13 shooting. I know, by the way, he played a game high 36 minutes. What do you think of my comparison to RJ, Harrison Ingram, and Armando Bacot? And, we've been talking about Carolina having the best front court duo in all of college basketball. Maybe the next conversation we have to have with Trimble back in the lineup is, does Carolina have as well as a three-man tandem that the sport has to offer?
Yeah, that conversation will probably eventually come up. I don't know if we're going to have it just yet. First of all, I'd have to look at some of the trios that you have in college basketball, because there's not many that exist like this. But when you score 35 of the 37 second half points, it is hard not to have that type of conversation. And down the stretch, everybody steps up and makes a big play. And you could say whatever you want about Caleb Wilson. Again, there was somebody that pointed out to me, well, he made some mistakes in that second half. Guys, this game ain't even close if Caleb Wilson is not playing in this one. Carolina, Ohio State would have ran away with this game if Caleb Wilson isn't playing for Carolina in this one. He had 16 points on 7 of 11 shooting and 8 rebounds in the second half alone. So this dude, there towards the end of the game, in some of the final possessions, there might have been moments where people were a little bit frustrated with him on the defensive end of the floor and everything like that. But what he was able to do offensively was really what kept Carolina in position to be able to win this game. And then it allows for guys like Trimble and Vasar to make the plays on the offensive end of the floor that they ended up making. But yeah, he deserves a ton of credit, because, as you said, in a game that was so tightly officiated, he had 3 fouls called on him in the second half. Same thing with Kai and Evans. They were calling basically everything. If he even slightly touched the hand of whoever shot it there at the end, I think it might have been Royal who shot it there at the end. If he touches his hand, that's an automatic call. So for him to be able to block that shot in that crucial moment like that, that is just a sensational job done by him. He deserves a ton of credit for showing up when he needed to on the defensive end of the floor. And I just continue to be amazed by the way that he plays. Henry Vasar, I mean, it just looks effortless when he's out there on the floor. 17 and 10, you could almost call it a quiet 17 and 10 if he hadn't made that basket late that were thrown down that dunk late. Because, I mean, before that, it's not the sexiest performance that you're ever going to see. It's not a guy that's just dominating like he did the other night against East Tennessee State, but he was very productive for Carolina early in the game, and he steps up when he's needed to. And then, I mean, again, when it comes to the leadership of Trimble, when it comes to the shot making and clutch moments for Trimble, he showed today why he is capable of being the leader that Carolina needs him to be. So, I mean, this big three right now for Carolina that they've got, and I hate using that phrase. I probably shouldn't have used that one because that brings me back to the Miami Heat days. But this trio that Carolina has, I mean, this is the group that you feel like they are going to be relying on a lot down the stretch of the season, especially because, when you look at it right now, I mean, who else is really producing at a consistent rate? I mean, outside of those guys, your next leading scorer had 6. So you need other guys to step up around them. They're going to have to at some point because there's going to be an off night for one of, or God forbid, 2 of these guys in the same night, and somebody else is going to have to play better. But these guys were the big reason why Carolina comes away with a victory in Atlanta and now sits 11-1 on the season and has us talking about what heights they could reach with this group now back on the floor together.
The second thing I wrote down, Jared Stevenson was the unsung hero, and this kind of will kind of take us to 2 different areas. One, I mean, credit to him. Second time he's made a big play defensively late this season. He had, the contest at Kentucky. He has the steal tonight. Both those plays help Carolina come away with the win. But, with the return of Trimble, as we predicted, he was going to be the odd man out of the rotation. He gets moved to the bench. You move Luka Bogovac down to the 3. He still plays 27 minutes, goes 3 of 7 from the field, 0 of 4 from 3, but does grab 5 rebounds, hands out 2 assists against 0 turnovers. Just made every little play that proved to be big as the game moved along. And that says a lot about his character, man. This is a guy that left Alabama seeking a new basketball home after some up and downs with that program. He comes back to, his hometown team, to the school that he probably dreamed of always playing, gets a pretty big role out of the gate, is playing, feels like, 30 plus minutes a night. And it's a big part of all the success that Carolina enjoyed without Seth Trimble. But I think he was able to prove to himself tonight that, no, I'm not starting, but my role's not going to be diminished. I mean, he was on the lineup, or he was on the floor in the closing minutes for Carolina, despite him not being able to shoot, from behind the 3-point line because of what he provides for you as a defender and then as a rebounder. So, one, just really want to just tip my hat to him because in this day and time, we saw it last year with Ian Jackson when he got moved to the bench, a move that was what was best for Carolina. He just quit. I mean, that was basically all she wrote for his time with the program. When that's not going to be the same with Jared Stevenson. I think he's still going to battle out there and play his butt off, and that was really fun to watch. But this does just bring us to, what Carolina's starting lineup looked like, and that's Evans at the point guard, Trimble, Luka, Henry, and Wilson. They all, Kai and Evans played 16 minutes. You'd think that'd be the fewest minutes of any starter, but no, that ends up being Luka Bogovac, who plays just 13 minutes, scored 2 points, had 2 rebounds, 2 assists, was pretty much a nothing burger. Kai and Evans, he, had to endure second half foul trouble with 3 of the softest fouls I've seen called all this year. And this brings us to the depth. It's something we've talked so much about. And it showed up for Carolina in a big way. Carolina's bench plus 15 tonight. They outscore Ohio State's bench 15-0. And it was just steady. 6 from Jaron Stevenson, 3 from Powell, 3 from Jaden Young, who feels like he's carved out somewhat of a role for himself here in the last handful of games, and then 3 for Derek Dixon. Stevenson led the bench with 27 minutes. Dixon played 24. Powell 15. Jaden Young follows up there with 3. What did you make of the way that Hubert Davis utilized his rotation tonight? Because for the first time since Kansas, Carolina was at full strength.
Yeah, I like the way that he utilized the group out there. I thought that Derek Dixon was the guy that really needed to play more minutes out there than Kyan Evans. It just felt like the offense was moving a little bit better with him on the floor, especially late in the game. In that second half, Kyan Evans, the game turned into more of a half-court game, and I think that's really where Derek Dixon sort of thrives. I think he's more of a threat with the ball in his hands. He's more of a threat to attack the rim. He's, at this point, even more of a threat to knock down shots from the outside more consistently. And so I like that. I like the fact that Powell played 15 minutes. Today was one of those games you had to feel it out. We said, Powell played 24 minutes the other night, and we said, yeah, that's probably about the sweet spot for him. But again, it's all about feeling out the game. And I felt like Powell was effective at times when he was on the floor, but there were other times that he was pushed around a little bit and bullied when it came to getting points in the paint for Ohio State. And so I think that was the smart thing, was to have him off the floor and ultimately roll with Jaren Stevenson. And Stevenson, just continues to show you how versatile of a defender he is. Was this a perfect game from him? Not by any stretch. And you talked about it. And I think that's the biggest thing that you have to come to terms with, is that when he is on the floor, there are times where it feels like you're playing 4-on-5. Now, the good news is for him is that he took 4 threes. He missed all 4 of them. The other 3 shots that he took, he made all of them. So if he's going to be able to do that, well, first of all, seek out those shots inside the arc a little bit more. He pulled down a couple offensive rebounds, was able to score off of those. That's something that we need to see as well. But the other thing that we saw from him versatility-wise was there was a lineup where he was on the floor with Caleb Wilson. Henry Vassar was out of the game, and Jaren Stevenson is your 5. We talked about this possibly being something that we would see this year moving forward, because you cannot find a consistent contributor at that backup 5 spot. And I thought he handled it well. I think he's going to be able to defend that position, especially at 6'10". The biggest thing from him, though, was you talked about the steal. The steal was huge because Carolina doesn't have a chance to tie the game there and ultimately win the game without that steal from him. The other, not tie the game. What am I talking about? But just to get that extra possession and then basically win the game right there. The biggest thing that he did was, I thought, on the last second attempt for Ohio State, John Mobley Jr. gets a pretty good look from beyond the arc. Now, granted, it was deep, but it was a pretty good look. If that is not contested, there's a good chance that he ends up making that shot. But a great job by Jaren Stevenson to step up, contest it, but smartly contest it. Not like the closeout that Caleb Wilson had, which was a mistake on his part, where you end up fouling and make that a 4-point play. This is one where he just does a good enough job to get his hand in the way and at least affect the shot. And so I think he is such a valuable piece on that defensive end of the floor. So much credit needs to be given to him for what he did down the stretch. And I think ultimately, look, when it comes to the starting lineup, I think Luka Bogovac is the guy that makes the most sense to be there, because I think that Jaren Stevenson's effort off the bench on the defensive end of the floor is something that will be welcome. But that doesn't mean that Jaren Stevenson can't be part of the closing lineup, especially if he's playing the way that he played in this game defensively. So I get it. People, again, really read into starting lineups and how important that is. But it ultimately matters what your closing 5 is. And when in this game, when they needed some help on the defensive end of the floor, they turned to Jaren Stevenson and it worked out for him.
Yeah, I do think, look, we're still searching for consistency at the point guard position. And now we're seeking it at the 3 because Luka last 2 games, I don't know what my guy's doing. It wasn't the Luka that played his best against USC Upstate 15-5-5. There's been some sort of a regression there. And today, because Ashton texted me saying they need to put Derek Dixon in the starting lineup. I thought Kyan Evans' defense when he wasn't getting called for fouls was stellar. I thought he was defending at a really high level, set the tone for Carolina in the half court. And he had 3 assists against 1 turnover. At this point, he's not going to be the offensive player that he was at Colorado State. There's something lacking where that's just not who he is right now. But
he's playing on the ball. If you want him to be that guy, play him off ball. I'm telling you.
The problem is I don't know how. I mean, I like the ball in Seth's hands, but when the ball's in Seth's hands, he's looking to create. He's looking to dribble drive, and it's either going to be him at the rim or laying it off for one of the bigs. I don't know if he's getting open looks for Kyan Evans behind the 3-point line. I think it's going to maybe come more so when they're playing with Derek Dixon. But all these questions, they're easier to answer with Seth Trimble out there. Like that's what he is, man. Like he's a Band-Aid. He just covers up so much for Carolina. That's both tangible and intangible, which is why so many people expect them to take this a step forward now that he's back. And so with that brings us to tonight's discussion topic. And it'll lead us to some audio from Seth Trimble. As I mentioned, this is the first 11-1 start Carolina has enjoyed since they won the national championship back in 2008, 2009. They the last time they had a chance to match this was that 2017-2018 season. What did Carolina do? Lost at home to Wofford. So obviously this team and that team in two different areas. But after the win, Seth Trimble joined Jenny Dell for a post-game interview, and she simply asked the senior guard, does this group have what it takes to win a national championship? And here's what he had to say.
Is this a team that can make a deep run in March? I know it's early.
Absolutely. I mean, we have the tools. We have all the tools in the world. We got our vets. We got our young freshman superstars. We got a great coaching staff. We got all the tools that we need. So this team can absolutely make that run.
We have all the tools that we need, I think, is the most important thing that you got to take away from his answer there. We play the comparison game, and so that's why we'll look back at 2008, 2009. Obviously, this team and that team with two different stratospheres, allowing 75 points or fewer in 12 straight games, first time since 97, 98. What did that team do? That team went to a Final Four. So if you want to use 11-1, if you want to use 75 points or less, both those would suggest that Carolina is poised to play deep into March. At Roy Williams or under Roy Williams, there was a formula. Have 4 1,000-point scores, win the Maui Invitational, don't win the ACC tournament. Hubert Davis is only in his 5th year, and his one Final Four appearance was when Carolina was an 8 seed. There isn't a formula that we can point to and say, when we see Carolina do X, Y, and Z, that's how we know we've got a Final Four team. We had the discussion topic. It was earlier in the week, 2 weeks ago, about them not being inside the top 12 of the AP poll. And that AP poll for after week 6 for the past 20 years has delivered the national champion. But we made the case for Carolina to maybe enter that conversation. At 11-1 with 3 wins and quad 1 as of right now, are you more comfortable saying with the return of Seth Trimble with the Tar Heel trio, this team is a legitimate threat contender to cut down the nets in April?
I think the thing about it is that are they more equipped to do it now than they were before Seth Trimble's return? Certainly. But do you look at this team and compare them to some of the teams that we have seen early on in the season and look at them as a national title contender? I think they're close. I think they're probably Elite 8 good right now. I just don't know if I put them on the same platform as teams like Arizona, teams like UConn, who I think is really, really good. Those are the two teams that I think are the best in college basketball. And I mean, I think right now, Carolina is just, you're looking for other guys besides this trio to step up, because as I said, what happens when this trio has an off night? Who is actually going to be able to carry the water for Carolina? It just doesn't feel like they have that consistency everywhere else. I mean, this is the second straight game where they've been carried by a group of guys. In the game against East Tennessee State, it was two guys. It was Caleb Wilson and it was Henry Vassar dragging this team to a victory. In this game, it was a trio of guys that ended up dragging you to a victory. But you would like for other guys to be a little bit more consistent. I think the two things that stand in the way right now for Carolina is the fact that they don't have a point guard that you can trust just yet. They're still looking to figure that position out. And if you can get Derek Dixon to that point, then I think you can start to have that conversation more realistically. And the other thing is this team's got to figure out.
All right, it looks like we have lost Anthony. Don't know what happened to him and his situation over there. I'll just pick it up. I want to say clearly they're a national title threat. They're a national title contender. I think there are metrics that would say so. There are metrics that would prove that they are a team that can compete for the national championship. They're 22nd in KenPom. Their defense is top 25. You've got 3 wins in quad 1 play when that's before you even get into conference play. All that stuff points to and suggests you're a threat to win a national championship. I do think, though, it's okay to admit out loud as a Carolina fan, there is a gap. There is a separation from those teams he mentioned. You've got Arizona. You've got Michigan. You've got Duke. You've got UConn. I think those are teams that are clearly national title contenders. And so as Carolina reached what those teams have achieved in terms of consistent excellence against, power conference opponent time in, time out, no, they have not. But I would also argue that have those teams lost someone as important as Seth Trimble was to their roster after the first week of the season, that answer is also no. That answer is also no, they have not. And so I think Carolina's going to give themselves a chance here. You've got a bye game, at home against ECU on Monday night. You should wrap up non-conference play 12-1. You get an 8-day layoff before you come back and you open ACC play at home against a Florida State team that some people were really high on coming into the season, but they lost at home to UMass not too long ago. They've suffered some losses in there that maybe they shouldn't have suffered. To me, it feels a lot like it was 2 years ago, where the more that Carolina played, the more that Carolina made the case to be a national title threat. And by the time that Carolina got to March, they won an ACC regular season title. They made the ACC tournament final, and they were a 1 seed and went on to the Sweet 16 before losing to an Alabama team that would go on to the Final Four and really give UConn as steep of a push as any team did during their run of back-to-back national championships. It's just March, or it's just December 20th. There's still a long way to go in this climb to become a national championship team. They've got to shoot it better from the outside. They've got to clean up the free throw shooting. but some of the elements are there with their ability to defend, their ability to rebound, and they've proven they can win games late in the final minutes away from home. And guess what you got to do if you're going to win a national championship? You've got to win 6 games away from your home gym. And they've won at Kentucky, and they've got a neutral win here at Atlanta tonight. So, look, I'll agree that there's a separation from these teams, and I think there's a Class A of the Kansas, or not the Kansas, but the Arizonas, the Dukes, the Purdues of the world. But I think Carolina's in Class B. And I think they're in that neck of the woods with an Arkansas or some other teams that have maybe emerged as teams that could win a national championship. So I'd love to be in Class A right now, but if we're at Class A come March as opposed to Class B, we'll feel a lot better when we get our brackets about putting Carolina deep into the NCAA tournament field. Last thing we'll do before we get out of here is hand out our game balls. And I'll do the honors, and I'll go first. I'll take the layup. I'll take Caleb Wilson with the big game back in front of his hometown. 20-point, 15-rebound performance in 34 minutes. Was 9 of 16 from the field, just 2 of 5 from the foul line. 2 assists, 3 fouls, 2 turnovers in those 34 minutes. The 15 rebounds, though, a career high for him in his young Carolina career. And this is evidence that you can't put everything into the plus-minus stat, because he has a 20-point, 15-rebound double-double. Caleb Wilson had the worst plus-minus of any Tar Heel on the court today. Carolina was -8 with him on the court. But with that being said, they don't win the game without him. So Caleb Wilson gets my game ball for the win over Ohio State.
Yeah, I'll go with Seth Trimble. The performance just speaks for itself. 17 points, 6 of 13 from the field, but 3 of 5 from beyond the arc, 2 of 3 at the foul line for him. He had 2 rebounds, 3 assists, turned the ball over just 1 time in this game. Only had 2 fouls, which is impressive because, with as many fouls as was being called in this game, it would have been easy for him to pick up a few more, but makes the plays down the stretch that Carolina needs him to, with an important lay-in, and then eventually that pass as he's going down on the floor to Henry Vassar. What a performance from him coming back into the lineup. I mean, plays the most minutes of anybody on the court today, 36 minutes for him in his return. He was incredibly valuable, and his leadership cannot be denied at this point. It's just different when Seth Trimble is on the floor, so he has to get my game ball.
Yeah, you can't argue with that one. I thought about going that way, but I'll give it to Caleb Wilson. He wanted to put on a show in front of his hometown. He most certainly did that, but make no mistake about it. With no Seth Trimble, no Carolina victory, no happy podcast here on a Saturday night. With that, folks, it is going to wrap up this edition of the show. In the meantime, we will direct you guys to the website. That's HeelToughVlog.com. Coverage of today's game can be found on the website. Game preview and the recap are both up there on the website. So if you want to read a little bit more in depth about the win for Carolina, go back and do so. I'll be getting you ready for the East Carolina game. That game is Monday night, 8 p.m. In the Smith Center. Preview will go up Monday morning if I'm in attendance for the game. Anthony will have you covered with the recap side of things for basketball. As for football, still keeping you up to date on the offseason for Carolina. Any more transfer portal news we'll have you covered. Carolina searching for the new offensive coordinator, and Bill Belichick is going big coordinator hunting. He is after Chip Kelly and Bobby Petrino. Whenever we get news on that front, we'll have you covered on the website as well. That's HeelToughVlog.com. We want you to make that your home for the best Carolina basketball and Tar Heel news and opinions. As for the podcast, you guys know where to find us. Every major podcasting platform, just search the Four Corners Podcast and we'll pop up. There, we encourage you to rate, review, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any audio editions of the show. We'll be back Sunday night with the ECU preview and back on Tuesday with the ECU recap, all before we take some time for the holiday break. If you keep up with us visually, the best way to do so is like and follow the Facebook page. That's at Heel Tough Blog. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's at Heel Tough Blog. Trying to get to 600 subscribers by Christmas, or follow me on Twitter at HTB_Josh. When you do so, you'll get a notification set to your mobile device. You can jump in and be a part of the conversation as we sit here and talk Carolina basketball all season long. With that, folks, it is going to wrap up this edition of the show. I do want to thank Anthony once again for hosting with me. We want to thank you guys for both watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.